One card in this game reportedly sold for $3 million. Not a painting, not a gold coin, a single card from a game a math student invented just to kill time between events at a convention. But here's what almost nobody realizes. That little side project didn't just make people rich. It invented an entire industry. Every Pokemon card in your closet, every Yu-Gi-Oh deck, every collectible card ever printed, all of it exists because of what happened in 1993. So today, the story of the first trading card game ever made, the fortunes hidden inside it, and the secrets it's still keeping 30 years later. This is Magic the Gathering. Stop and really picture that. There was no such thing as a game you build from cards you collect and trade, until one game did it first. Guinness World Records made it official. Magic was the first. Its creator was even granted the original patent on the concept itself. So every game we've ever covered on this channel, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, One Piece, is a child of this one. They didn't copy a game, they copied a blueprint. And to understand that blueprint, you have to meet the man who drew it. His name is Richard Garfield, and in 1991, he was not trying to change the world. He was a doctoral student in mathematics. He walked into a tiny company called Wizards of the Coast to pitch a board game about racing robots, and they turned him down. But the founder, Peter Adkison, saw something in him and handed him a stranger challenge. Forget the robots. Make me a game that's cheap, fast, and small enough to fit in a pocket. Something people can play in the dead minutes at a convention. Garfield went home and chewed on it. And on a hike near a waterfall in Oregon, it hit him. What if the game was built from cards you collected, and no two players ever owned the same deck? He sketched the whole thing in about a week. The robot game came out later, and nobody remembers it. The side project became a phenomenon. So in August 1993, Magic went on sale. And the real test came at Gen Con, the biggest gaming convention in the country. Wizards printed about 2.6 million cards, a supply they were certain would last until New Year's. The shipment even showed up a day late. It didn't matter. Players cracked the packs, sat down right on the convention floor, and something clicked. This was unlike anything they'd ever played. Word tore through the halls. By the end of the weekend, every last card was gone. Therefore, the company, which had been run out of a basement, suddenly couldn't print fast enough, and within 2 years, it exploded from a handful of people to 250 employees. The genie was never going back in the bottle. So what was this game everyone lost their minds over? At its heart, it's a wizard's duel. The game calls you a planeswalker, a spellcaster who travels between worlds, and the player across from you is another one. You each start at 20 life, draw a hand of 7 cards, and your deck is your personal arsenal of monsters and magic. The goal is brutally simple. Drag your opponent from 20 life down to 0 before they do it to you. Everything else, the creatures, the counterspells, the mind games, is just how you get there. But the genius isn't the goal, it's the fuel. Because you can't just drop your best dragon on turn 1. Every spell costs mana, and mana comes from cards called lands. And here's the rule that changes everything. You can only play 1 land per turn. So your power creeps up one single step at a time, like a slowly rising budget. Early on, you can barely afford a tiny creature. Many turns later, you're unleashing monsters. That one restriction is the heartbeat of Magic. It's why a game builds like a story, tension rising turn after turn, instead of ending in a flash. And what you spend that mana on comes in 5 flavors. This is the soul of the whole game, and no game since has ever copied it as well. Every card belongs to one of 5 colors. White is order, law, and community. Blue is knowledge, patience, and control. Black is power and ambition at any cost. Red is freedom, passion, and pure chaos. Green is nature, instinct, and raw growth. They call it the color pie, and it's genius, because each color isn't just a look, it's a philosophy, a way of playing that's also a way of thinking. Choosing your colors is really choosing who you are at the table. Are you white, blue, black, red, or green? Hold that question. You'll want to answer it in the comments later. Those colors get poured into a handful of card types, and once you know them, any card you pick up makes sense. Creatures are your fighters. They attack and they block. Sorceries are one-time spells you cast on your own turn. Instants are the magic trick, spells you can fire at any second, even on your opponent's turn. Enchantments and artifacts stick around, quietly bending the rules in your favor. Planeswalkers are powerful allies you summon to fight beside you. And in 2023, the game did something it hadn't done in 16 years. It added a brand new type, the battle. But one idea binds all of them together, and it's the single deepest thing in the game. It's called the stack, and it's why Magic never gets solved. When someone casts a spell, it doesn't happen instantly. It waits. And in that pause, the other player gets to respond, stacking their own spell right on top of it. Picture a stack of plates. The last one you set down is the first one you take off. So the spell cast last resolves first. Therefore, those instants become weapons. You can counter an attack, save your creature, or steal a game in the half second before a spell lands. That not-so-fast moment, that invisible war of split-second decisions, is where every mind game in Magic lives. It's chess, if chess let you move during your opponent's turn. Underneath all that depth, a turn keeps a simple rhythm. You untap your cards, refreshing everything you used last turn. You draw. You hit your main phase. Play a land, cast your spells. Then combat. You send your creatures charging in, and your opponent decides what to block. And one quiet rule keeps the whole thing fair. A fresh creature has summoning sickness. The turn it arrives, it's too new to attack, unless it has the keyword haste. So every monster you play is really a promise you're making to next turn. Patience isn't just smart in Magic, it's baked right into the rules. Because dropping someone to 0 life is only the obvious path. There are 3. 1. The classic, burn them down to 0. 2. Run them out of cards. If a player ever has to draw from an empty deck, they lose on the spot. And some decks never attack at all. They just quietly grind your entire library into dust. It's called milling, and it's terrifying to play against. 3. Poison. Certain creatures don't deal damage. They deal poison counters, and just 10 of them ends the game no matter how much life you have. 3 completely different roads. 1 destination. And the cards speak their own language. 1-word abilities called keywords. Flying. It can only be blocked by other flyers, so it sails clean over the ground war. Trample. Its extra damage spills right past a blocker into your opponent's face. Haste. It can attack the very second it lands. Death Touch. Any damage it deals is lethal. A tiny mouse that can kill a dragon. There are hundreds of these, but a handful show up in nearly every set, and once you know them, the cards start reading themselves. Which raises a question. How does a game this deep survive for a 7-year-old and a professional? That's the trick almost no game pulls off. You can learn Magic at a kitchen table in an afternoon, but underneath sits one of the deepest strategy games ever built. Deep enough that mathematicians genuinely study it. How deep? Wizards runs a world championship where around 128 of the best players on Earth battle for a prize pool of $1 million. Same 20 life, same 5 colors, same stack. A child and a world champion playing the identical game, oceans apart in mastery. And that game has been quietly reinventing itself for over 30 years. Because Magic never sits still. It's printed new sets several times a year since 1993. More than 30,000 unique cards, and climbing. You can even date a card at a glance. In 2003, the game completely redrew its card frame, so one look at the border tells you which side of that line it was born on. But with age came a problem the designers didn't see coming: power creep. The earliest sets were the Wild West, holding both the strongest and the weakest cards ever made. And the strongest ones? They were about to become the most valuable cardboard on the planet. But to see why, you first have to understand a promise Wizards made, and a list it can never take back. First, know that Magic isn't one game, it's many, called formats. At the bottom is Standard, only the last couple of years of cards, refreshing constantly, the beginner's on-ramp. Then the ladder climbs, Pioneer, then Modern, then Legacy. And at the very top sits Vintage, where nearly every card ever printed is legal, and the most broken cards of all time are limited to a single copy each. There's also Limited, where everyone cracks fresh packs and builds a deck on the spot from whatever they pull. Pure skill, no collection needed. But the most popular way to play Magic today? Wizards didn't even invent it. It's called Commander, and it started as a fan experiment. In the late 1990s, a group of players up in Alaska cooked up their own format. A 100-card deck, only one copy of each card allowed, built around a single legendary creature you pick as your, quote, commander. It's social. It's usually 4 friends around a table. It's built for big, chaotic, memorable swings instead of grim competition. Wizards had nothing to do with it, but it spread by word of mouth for over a decade until the company finally noticed and made it official in 2011. Therefore, today, the biggest way people play Magic is a grassroots idea the company had to chase. The players built it themselves. Now the promise that haunts the whole hobby. Back in 1996, Wizards reprinted a batch of old cards, and it tanked their value overnight. Collectors who'd spent real money were furious, so the company caved and made a guarantee to calm them down. A specific list of old cards would never, ever be reprinted again. That promise still holds today. But think about what it created. The supply of those cards is frozen forever, while demand only grows. Therefore, their prices climb into the hundreds, the thousands, and beyond. Players beg for the promise to end so they can finally afford to play. Collectors defend it with everything they've got. It is the deepest fault line in Magic, and sitting right on top of it are the most notorious cards ever made. They're called the Power 9. 9 cards that appeared only in Magic's first 3 print runs in 1993, and then never again. They are so absurdly strong that most formats ban them outright, and the one format that even allows them lets you run a single copy. How strong? Take Ancestral Recall. For 1 mana, it draws you 3 cards, a deal so lopsided it should never have existed. Or Time Walk. For 2 mana, you simply take an entire extra turn. These cards break the game on purpose. They're relics from a time before anyone understood how dangerous a piece of cardboard could be. And the most dangerous of them all is a flower. The Black Lotus. They call it the Mona Lisa of Magic, and here's all it does. You sacrifice it for 3 mana of any color, completely free, an entire turn's worth of power out of nowhere. That's it. That's the most coveted card in the game. And remember the $3 million from the very start of this video? This is the card. A flawless Black Lotus from 1993, reportedly the only one of its grade in existence, sold in a private sale in 2024 for a reported $3 million, the most expensive Magic card ever. One quiet detail makes the older copies priceless. The signature scrawled across them belongs to the card's artist, Christopher Rush, not the game's designer. 1 flower, $3 million. And it isn't even the only card here worth a fortune, because the reserve list quietly turns even plain-looking cards into gold. The original dual lands, humble cards that just make 2 colors of mana, nothing flashy, are on that untouchable list, never to be reprinted. So a single one can run hundreds of dollars, and a serious legacy or vintage deck might need a dozen of these ancient cards just to function. That's the strange truth of high-level Magic. It can cost as much as a used car to play, not because of the flashy dragons, but because of 30-year-old lands that will never be printed again. But scarcity has a wilder side. Sometimes Wizards makes a card rare on purpose and hides it from the entire planet. In 2023, Magic crossed over with The Lord of the Rings, and Wizards did something audacious. They printed exactly one copy of a card called The One Ring, stamped 001 of 1, and slipped it at random into a single booster pack somewhere on the planet. Then they announced the hunt. Collectors tore open thousands of packs chasing it, and the One Ring to rule them all surfaced in the hands of a quiet store worker in Toronto, Canada. But the story wasn't over, because the buyer turned out to be Post Malone, the rapper and a lifelong Magic player, who reportedly paid $2 million for it, around $2.6 million all in. One card, one copy on Earth, $2 million. And yet, the rarest card in Magic isn't the priciest. Here's a twist collectors love. The most expensive cards aren't always the rarest. There is a card called the 1996 World Champion, a genuine, one-of-a-kind made for a single tournament winner, with every extra copy and even the printing plates destroyed in a ceremony so no other could ever exist. Truly, provably unique. And yet the last time it changed hands in public, back in 2001, it sold for just $17,500. Those wild million-dollar figures floating around online? Pure rumor, never a real sale. Because a card is only worth what someone will pay, and sometimes the rarest object in the room isn't the one everyone wants. Which is exactly why some cards get pulled from the game entirely. With more than 30,000 cards in the wild, even a company that playtests for years can't catch every disaster. So Magic keeps a living referee, the banned list. When one card turns out so powerful it warps every single game around it, Wizards yanks it from the format. A creature named Oko became so dominant a few years back that it was banned almost everywhere within weeks of release. A card so good it was, effectively, a mistake. It's a constant, delicate balancing act. 30 years of cards, all able to combine in millions of ways, policed one ban at a time to keep the game alive. But the biggest shakeup in Magic's history wasn't a banned card. It was an invasion. And here it is, the biggest change in Magic's entire history, and the most divisive. It's called Universes Beyond, and the idea is as simple as it is shocking. Magic started printing characters from other giant franchises as real, playable cards. Not fan art, not a gimmick. Legal cards you can build a real deck around. For 30 years, Magic had its own world, its own heroes, its own villains, its own lore. Then, Wizards cracked that world's doors wide open and let everyone else walk in. And once the doors were open, the flood was like nothing the game had ever seen. Look at who marched through those doors. The Lord of the Rings, with Gandalf, Sauron, and all of Middle-earth. Doctor Who, with the Doctor and the TARDIS. Warhammer 40,000, led by Abaddon himself. Fallout, with the Vault Dwellers and their dog. Assassin's Creed, with Ezio. The Transformers. Yes, Optimus Prime is a Magic card you can attack with. Even the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And Avatar: The Last Airbender. Aang, Katara, Zuko, which quietly became one of the best-selling sets of all time in its own right. Worlds that have nothing to do with each other, and nothing to do with Magic's own story, all shuffled into the same deck. For a collector, it's a candy store. For a lapsed fan, it's the reason to finally come back. But two of these sets didn't just sell well. They broke every record the game had. In June 2025, Magic released a Final Fantasy set, Cloud, Sephiroth, the Chocobos, all of it. And it became the best-selling set in the game's 30-year history. How fast? Wizards reported it pulled in around $200 million in a single day. To feel that, remember the Lord of the Rings set, itself a monster hit. It took about 6 months to reach that same number. A single day against 6 months. That isn't growth, that's an explosion. And it proved the crossovers weren't a side experiment. They were the main event. And Wizards saved the biggest name for last. In 2025, Marvel arrived. A full Spider-Man set, built, interestingly, from the comic books rather than the movies. Then the rest of the heroes followed. Iron Man, the Hulk, Wolverine, Storm, an entire universe of superheroes printed onto Magic cards. So picture the table now. A wizard, a hobbit, and Spider-Man, all in the same game. To someone who grew up on Magic, that is genuinely bizarre. But to a kid discovering it in 2026, it isn't strange at all. It's the whole appeal. But not everyone is cheering. To a huge number of longtime players, Universes Beyond feels like watching the thing they loved slowly disappear. Magic's own world, its own characters, its own lore, drowned out by other people's franchises. And Wizards has confirmed the crossovers will soon be half of everything they print. So there's the entire tension of modern Magic in a single sentence. The sets breaking every sales record are the same sets breaking longtime fans' hearts. It's a civil war between nostalgia and growth. And so far, the money is winning. And it isn't close. But money has a darker side too. And that money has a darker edge. In 2023, a Magic content creator accidentally bought booster boxes of a new set before its release date. A store had sold them early by mistake, and did what any fan would do. He filmed himself opening them. But then, according to the creator, agents from the Pinkertons showed up at his home. Yes, the same private detective agency from the 1800s. They called the cards stolen property and warned him of arrest. He said his wife was reduced to tears. Wizards later confirmed that it sent investigators and said the creator would be compensated. A billion-dollar company protecting a leaked set turned into one of the strangest, most uncomfortable stories the hobby has ever seen. And it wasn't the only time the money made fans wince. For its 30th anniversary in 2022, Wizards reprinted the Power 9, the Black Lotus included, in gorgeous new packs. But there was a catch buried in the fine print. These versions had a different card back, which meant they weren't legal to play in any real game. And they cost about $1,000 for 4 packs. So you could hand over a small fortune, tear in, actually pull a Black Lotus, and still not be allowed to use it in a single match. Fans were furious, comparing it to gambling with the lights off. It's the perfect snapshot of the tug-of-war inside Magic, between a beloved game and a business chasing $1 billion. And that business is enormous. Just how enormous? In 2022, Magic became the first brand in the entire history of its parent company, Hasbro, to earn over $1 billion in a single year. And it kept climbing. By 2025, its revenue hit roughly $1.7 billion, up nearly 60%, the engine pulling the whole company forward. A huge reason is the free app, Magic Arena, launched in 2019, which lets anyone learn and play on a phone for nothing. The front door that keeps pouring new players in. Not bad for a project meant to fill the downtime between events at a convention. So the real question is, how did it last? So many games flare up and burn out. Magic has lasted more than 30 years. Why? 3 reasons. It was first, it invented the trading card game itself and it never surrendered the crown. It's the deepest. That stack, those 5 colors, 30,000 cards combining in endless ways, a game intricate enough that academics study it for real. And it's social. Commander turned Magic into something you play around a table with friends, laughing, not just a duel you're trying to win. Add a collectible side worth literal fortunes, and you get something rare. A hobby that is a game, an art gallery, and an investment, all at the same time. Almost nothing else does all three. But the biggest thing Magic ever did wasn't for itself. Because here's the quiet secret behind this entire channel. The reason Pokemon cards exist. The reason there's a Yu-Gi-Oh!, a One Piece game, a Lorcana. The reason any of these can be collected, traded, and sold for fortunes. All of it traces back to one doctoral student who just wanted to make a quick little game for a convention. He didn't invent a game. He invented an industry. And every single pack you have ever torn open in any game owes something to 1993. So that's Magic the Gathering. Dreamed up by a mathematician to kill time at a convention. Sold out in a weekend. The game that quietly invented an entire industry and grew into a billion-dollar universe where one flower made of cardboard is worth $3 million. Now back to that question from the start. If you were going to play, what would you be? White, blue, black, red, or green? Tell me your color in the comments. I read them. And if this was your first real look at Magic, now you know why the whole hobby began right here. Next time, we take on the game every anime kid grew up on, the one built for pure, explosive, one-turn kill combos, Yu-Gi-Oh! Drop a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you there.